Blood stained the imported Italian marble floor of the penthouse at 740 Park Avenue, one of Manhattan's most exclusive addresses. The body of Dr. Celeste Laurent, 58, lay motionless beside her antique writing desk, a bronze sculpture, a gift from her late husband, just inches from her hand. The housekeeper's screams echoed through the 5,000-square-foot residence that October morning, alerting security and launching what would become one of New York's most shocking murder investigations. Have you ever wondered what drives someone to betray their own blood? What darkness could push a son to murder his own mother? In the rarefied air of Manhattan's Upper East Side, where old money whispers behind closed doors and new wealth screams for attention, the Laurent family had cultivated a reputation built on art, culture, and discretion. Their name adorned museum wings and charity galas. Their connections reached the highest echelons of New York society, and their fortune, estimated at over $75 million, seemed to insulate them from ordinary concerns. But money, it seems, buys neither love nor loyalty. As detectives sealed off the penthouse and began their methodical work, they uncovered a story far more complex than a simple break-in gone wrong. The alarm system had been disabled with expert precision. Nothing of significant value was missing. And the son, Adrian Laurent, displayed a grief that struck Detective Marcus O'Connell as oddly rehearsed, his tears never quite reaching his eyes. What investigators didn't yet know was that behind this seemingly senseless act of violence lay a calculated plot involving not just Adrian, but also his two girlfriends, Maya Serrano, a Queens native with boundless ambition, and Tatiana Volkov, a Russian art student with a mysterious past. Together, they formed a triangle of greed, passion, and deadly ambition. The truth would eventually emerge. Dr. Celeste Laurent had recently altered her will, placing strict conditions on her son's inheritance, conditions that threatened his lavish lifestyle. Rather than earn his fortune through the maturity benchmarks his mother demanded, Adrian chose a more direct path to wealth, a path that led straight through his mother's heart. This case reveals the darkest corners of wealth and entitlement, where family bonds shatter under the weight of greed, where love becomes twisted by ambition, and where murder becomes just another transaction in the pursuit of fortune. Before we continue with this chilling true crime story, take a moment to subscribe to True Crime Dossier. Each week, we explore cases that not only captivate, but also teach valuable life lessons about human nature and the consequences of unchecked desire. Hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what comes next. Dr. Celeste Laurent wasn't merely wealthy, she was influential. With 3 advanced degrees from Columbia University, including a PhD in art history specializing in Renaissance masters, she commanded respect in both academic circles and high society. By age 40, she had curated exhibitions at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, published 4 definitive texts on Italian painters, and established herself as the foremost authority on authentication of disputed works. Celeste could look at a painting for 30 seconds and tell you not just if it was genuine, but which apprentice might have assisted on which corner, recalled James Whitfield, former director of the Met's European collection. Her eye was legendary. This expertise made the Lawrence gatekeepers of cultural legitimacy in New York. Their approval could transform an aspiring collector into a recognized connoisseur. Their criticism could render a $1 million acquisition worthless overnight. The Laurent fortune began with Victor, Celeste's late husband, whose investment banking career evolved into art acquisition in the 1980s. Victor possessed an uncanny ability to identify undervalued works before they appreciated. He purchased Caravaggio's Lost Magdalene for $2.3 million in 1992. It was valued at $58 million upon his death in 2015. Their collection, housed primarily in the Park Avenue penthouse, included 17 Renaissance masterpieces, 11 Impressionist paintings, and various sculptures valued collectively at over $100 million. These weren't merely investments, they represented power, taste, and exclusivity. The Lawrence didn't just own beautiful objects, said Margaret Chen, art critic for The New Yorker. They owned beauty itself, or at least the authority to define it. Following Victor's death, Celeste maintained iron control over both the collection and the family's broader investments. Financial advisors described her as meticulous, exacting, and occasionally ruthless. She diversified holdings into real estate, technology startups, and sustainable energy, growing the family fortune by 22% in just 7 years. This same precision characterized her approach to motherhood. Former household staff described how she tracked Adrian's academic performance with spreadsheets, scheduled his extracurriculars with military efficiency, and vetted his friendships based on family connections and potential advantages. Mrs. Laurent didn't simply want success for her son, said former nanny Eliza Cortez. She demanded perfection because anything less reflected poorly on the Laurent name. The penthouse itself served as physical manifestation of this legacy. Occupying the top 2 floors of one of Manhattan's most exclusive pre-war buildings, the residence required both significant wealth and board approval to acquire, a double barrier ensuring only the right sort of neighbors. Inside, 14-foot ceilings accommodated museum-quality lighting systems designed to showcase the art collection. Hand-laid herringbone floors imported from a 17th-century French chateau created a backdrop for antique Persian rugs. The library contained first editions valued at over $3 million, while the dining room featured a table that once belonged to the Medici family. The limestone building, constructed in 1929, housed only 31 residences, most occupied by families whose wealth stretched back generations. Monthly maintenance fees exceeded the average American's annual salary. That building doesn't just represent money, explained socialite Barbara Astor. It represents a certain type of New York. Old guard, tasteful, discreet. You don't buy your way in, you're chosen. It was in this rarefied environment that the Laurent drama unfolded, a world where appearance mattered above all, where fortunes were measured not just in dollars but in influence, and where Celeste Laurent reigned with absolute authority until the night everything changed. Adrien Laurent's life began with every advantage imaginable. From his first breath, excellence wasn't merely expected, it was predetermined. At age 3, he attended Parkside Preparatory, where annual tuition exceeded $45,000. By 12, he had traveled to 27 countries, spoke 3 languages, and played cello at Lincoln Center during a youth showcase. Former classmates recall a boy who never carried his own backpack, never cleaned his own lunch tray, never faced consequences. Adrien always had someone, a driver, a tutor, a handler, smoothing his path, said Thomas Reynolds, a Phillips Exeter classmate. If he failed a test, his mother hired better tutors. If he broke school rules, substantial donations followed. He existed in a consequence-free bubble. This pattern continued at Yale, where Adrien's mediocre academic performance remained hidden beneath a veneer of social success. While maintaining a C- average, he became renowned for hosting lavish parties at his off-campus apartment, complete with professional bartenders, hired models, and occasional minor celebrities. His first arrest came during junior year, a DUI charge dismissed through his mother's connections. His second, for cocaine possession, disappeared similarly. By graduation, Adrien had developed expensive tastes without developing the skills to afford them. Adrien believed wealth was his birthright, not something to earn, explained Dr. Martha Goldstein, forensic psychologist who later analyzed the case. This narcissistic entitlement formed the foundation of his personality. Having never faced genuine failure, he lacked the emotional tools to manage disappointment. Post-college, Adrien embarked on a series of business ventures, each launched with substantial investment from his mother, each ending in spectacular failure. Lux Nightlife Group, 2018. A members-only nightclub that closed after 6 months, losing $2.3 million. Crypto Vineyard Ventures, 2019. A cryptocurrency supposedly backed by French Vineyard Holdings that attracted SEC scrutiny. Atelier 27, 2020. A contemporary art gallery that sold only 2 pieces, both to friends of Celeste Haute Hydration, 2021. A premium water brand that cost $19 per bottle and went bankrupt within 3 months. Financial records obtained during the murder investigation revealed Adrian had accumulated personal debts exceeding $4.7 million by age 27, including $1.2 million in credit card balances across 11 cards, $860,000 in gambling debts to various casinos, $675,000 borrowed from Celeste's social circle, often under false pretenses, $1.9 million in failed business investments. Despite these financial catastrophes, Adrian maintained appearances. His Instagram showcased weekends in Monaco, custom suits, VIP nightclub tables, and private jet travel, a carefully curated fiction of success. He needed the world to see him as exceptional, Dr. Goldstein noted. When reality contradicted this self-image, he simply rejected reality. The tension between mother and son intensified as Celeste's patience eroded. Their arguments, once private, began spilling into public settings. At the Museum of Modern Art Spring Gala, guests overheard Celeste telling Adrian he was Victor's greatest disappointment. During a charity auction at Christie's, she withdrew her paddle when he attempted to bid on her behalf. Text messages recovered from Adrian's phone document the deteriorating relationship. "You have exhausted my goodwill and my accounts. How many times must I rescue you from your own incompetence?" Celeste wrote 3 months before her murder. Adrian's response, "You enjoy watching me beg. This is your failure as much as mine." Their final public appearance together occurred at the New York Philharmonic benefit, 2 weeks before the murder. When introduced to the symphony's conductor, Adrian claimed to be temporarily between ventures while developing revolutionary investment opportunities. Celeste's correction was swift and cutting. "My son means he's unemployed and spending my money." Financial pressure, public humiliation, and psychological pathology created a perfect storm. As Dr. Goldstein concluded in her court testimony, Adrian developed a lethal equation in his mind. His mother had become an obstacle rather than a resource. In his distorted thinking, eliminating her represented not just financial salvation, but psychological liberation. Maya Serrano grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Astoria, Queens, where her mother worked double shifts as a hospital aide and her father drove a taxi. From her family's cramped living room, Manhattan's skyline glittered across the East River, close enough to see, yet seemingly unreachable. Maya wasn't just ambitious, recalled her community college roommate Jessica Kim. She was relentless. While other students discussed weekend plans, Maya researched CEOs and studied how they dressed, spoke, and networked. She saw her circumstances not as her destiny, but as her starting point. After earning an associate's degree in business administration, Maya secured a position as a hostess at 11 Madison Park, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. There, she meticulously observed the wealthy patrons, noting their conversational patterns and social hierarchies. "She could identify a fake Rolex at 20 paces," said former co-worker Miguel Diaz. "She studied the rich like an anthropologist, their habits, their language, their codes, and she was determined to cross over into their world." Maya met Adrian during a private event at the restaurant in 2020. He tipped extravagantly and invited her to an after-party at the Boom Boom Room. Within weeks, she had her own key to his Soho loft. Tatiana Volkov entered Adrian's life through different channels. Born in St. Petersburg to a mathematics professor and a former ballerina, she arrived in New York on a student visa to study at the prestigious School of Visual Arts. Her talent for restoration work, particularly of Renaissance-era paintings, caught the attention of gallery owners and collectors. Tatiana possessed technical skills that matched her academic knowledge, explained Professor Edward Michaels of SVA. But she also carried a certain guardedness. Questions about her background in Russia were politely deflected. Immigration records revealed that Tatiana's student visa was set to expire in December 2022. Without sponsorship for an H-1B work visa or a path to permanent residency, she faced mandatory return to Russia, a prospect she mentioned with visible dread to classmates. Adrian encountered Tatiana at a gallery opening where one of his mother's paintings was displayed. Witnesses recalled his immediate fascination with the soft-spoken Russian student who could discuss brush techniques and provenance with remarkable precision. "He circled her all evening," said gallery owner Margot Klein. "I remember thinking how attentive he seemed, unusual for Adrian, who typically preferred being the center of attention." What none of these observers realized was that Adrian maintained simultaneous relationships with both women. Text messages recovered during the investigation revealed his compartmentalized life. To Maya, "You're my future. Once I secure my inheritance, we'll buy that Miami penthouse you love." To Tatiana, "Mother adores your knowledge of art. When the time comes, you'll help manage the collection. No more visa worries." The two women discovered each other's existence approximately 3 months before the murder. Rather than this revelation ending either relationship, financial records showed the three began meeting regularly at the King Cole Bar at the St. Regis Hotel, a neutral territory where they crafted a peculiar alliance. "This triangular relationship defies conventional labels," explained Dr. Evelyn Chang, relationship psychologist who reviewed the case. Each participant fulfilled specific needs for the others. Maya provided Adrian with admiration and status validation. Tatiana offered cultural legitimacy and a connection to his mother's world. Adrian promised both women financial security and social advancement. Bank statements revealed Adrian's spending accelerated during this period. He purchased a $42,000 diamond bracelet for Maya, a rare first edition art book for Tatiana, and financed weekends at luxury hotels where staff confirmed all three stayed in the same suite. The relationship had transactional elements for everyone involved, noted Dr. Chung. Maya saw Adrian as her ticket to wealth. Tatiana viewed him as protection against deportation. Adrian used both women to fortify his fragile self-image. As Adrian's financial situation deteriorated, these transactions evolved from luxury gifts to desperate promises. The final texts between the three parties revealed a shift from indulgence to conspiracy, their shared fantasy of wealth morphing into a deadly plan as Adrian's options narrowed. The prosecution would later argue this triangle wasn't about passion, but calculation, a coldly pragmatic alliance formed not from love, but from mutual exploitation, with each participant willing to cross moral boundaries for their respective rewards. 6 weeks before her murder, Dr. Celeste Laurent met with Judith Cohen, her attorney of 25 years, at the prestigious law offices of Cohen, Blackwell Associates. The meeting, scheduled for 1 hour, stretched to nearly 4, as Celeste methodically outlined dramatic changes to her estate planning. She arrived with a detailed document containing her revised wishes, Cohen later testified. This wasn't an emotional reaction. It was a calculated decision based on decades of observing her son's behavior. The new will, signed and notarized that afternoon, fundamentally restructured the Laurent fortune. Under its terms, 65% of the estate, $48.7 million, would establish the Laurent Foundation for Arts Education, funding scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing careers in art history, conservation, and museum administration. 20%, $15 million, would endow permanent exhibitions at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Museum of Modern Art. The art collection would be donated to various museums with strict provisions that pieces remain publicly accessible rather than in private collections. The Park Avenue penthouse would be sold, with proceeds directed to housing initiatives for artists in New York City. Adrian would receive a monthly stipend of $12,000 until age 35, contingent upon meeting specific benchmarks including maintaining steady employment for at least 2 consecutive years, completing financial management courses, attending weekly therapy sessions, remaining free of arrests or legal entanglements, demonstrating fiscal responsibility as determined by an independent trustee. Only after meeting these conditions for a minimum of 5 consecutive years would Adrian gain access to the remaining 15% of the estate, approximately $11.2 million. Celeste was explicit about her intentions, Cohen stated during the trial. She told me, "This isn't punishment, it's protection, primarily from himself." 3 days after signing the revised will, Celeste emailed a summary of the changes to Adrian. His response was immediate and explosive. Security footage from the Laurent penthouse captured him arriving 17 minutes after receiving the email, buzzing repeatedly until the doorman granted access. Neighbors reported hearing sustained shouting from the residents. Building staff described Adrian's exit 40 minutes later as visibly enraged with tears or sweat on his face. Text messages sent by Adrian that evening revealed his fury. To Maya, "She's treating me like a effing child. Therapy, financial management courses. She wants to control me from beyond the grave." To Tatiana, "The paintings we discussed all going to museums, the penthouse, sold for artist housing. She's dismantling everything and calling it philanthropy." Phone records showed Adrian made 7 calls to his mother over the next 2 days. She answered none. When they finally spoke at a family dinner the following week, witnesses described a chilling exchange. After Celeste explained her decision was motivated by concern for his future, Adrian reportedly replied, "You've always controlled everything, but you can't control death, can you?" Financial analysts who reviewed the case noted the timing coincided with Adrian receiving final notices on 3 maxed-out credit cards and a pending eviction from his Soho apartment due to 3 months of unpaid rent. He wasn't just losing future wealth, explained prosecutor Elena Rivera. Without immediate access to his inheritance, his present lifestyle would collapse within weeks. For a man who had never developed coping mechanisms for disappointment, this new reality proved unbearable. The illusion he had maintained of wealth, success, and status faced immediate demolition. Before we continue with what happened next, we'd like to hear your thoughts. Are inheritance restrictions like those Celeste imposed fair safeguards or controlling manipulation? Would you place conditions on your family's inheritance? Drop your comments below. The discussion around family wealth and parental control raises fascinating questions about love, money, and freedom. The murder of Celeste Laurent began as whispered suggestions in the back corner of Lucien, a dimly lit French bistro in the Lower East Side. Surveillance footage captured Adrian, Maya, and Tatiana huddled over glasses of Bordeaux on 4 consecutive Tuesday evenings in September. Their conversations, initially hypothetical, gradually crystallized into actionable plans. What would happen if she just wasn't around anymore? Maya asked during their first documented meeting, according to Tatiana's later testimony. Theoretically speaking, credit card records tracked their movements across a circuit of bars chosen specifically for their lack of security cameras and crowded atmospheres, venues where conversations could disappear into background noise. At the Handy Liquor Bar in Soho, they sketched preliminary outlines. At Angel's Share in the East Village, they refined details. At the Blonde in Howard Street, they finalized their roles. By their 5th meeting at Employees Only in the West Village, fantasy had hardened into methodology. A server recalled overhearing fragments about security codes and schedules before the trio abruptly changed topics when she approached. They developed a murder plan with the same attention to detail they might have applied to a business proposal, noted Detective Marcus O'Connell. There were contingencies, timelines, and assigned responsibilities. Cell phone data revealed intensive research activities following these meetings. Tatiana's browser history showed searches for security system bypassing, forensic detection methods, and New York inheritance laws. Maya researched acting techniques for distress and how to fake emotional shock. Adrian's searches included untraceable poisons, blunt force trauma survival rates, and criminal insanity defense strategies. Their plan leveraged each person's specific knowledge and access. Adrian would provide the necessary penthouse entry codes and details about his mother's routines. As her son, he could move throughout the residence without arousing suspicion. His intimate knowledge of the alarm system, installed when he was a teenager, gave them critical information about potential vulnerabilities. Tatiana's role centered on her technological aptitude and artistic background. Having previously visited the penthouse to discuss art restoration, she had observed the security panel locations and camera positions. Her studies in preservation science had familiarized her with various chemicals, including those that could disable electronic systems without leaving traces. Maya, with her background in hospitality and customer service, would create the necessary diversion. Her experience handling difficult patrons at elite restaurants had developed her ability to convey convincing emotions on demand. A practiced performer, she could maintain composure under pressure. The trio meticulously tracked Celeste's schedule for 3 weeks, noting patterns and irregularities. They discovered her Friday routine was particularly consistent. Yoga at 7 a.m., meetings throughout the day, and quiet evenings at home, reviewing acquisition proposals for her collection. Text messages obtained from Maya's phone documented their evolving timeline. Guard change at 11 p.m. sharp. Front desk most vulnerable 11:10, 11:25 when Jorge takes his coffee break. Adrian, Sep 29. Mother always takes Ambien by 10. In deep sleep by 10:45. Impossible to wake until morning. Adrian, Oct 1. Back service elevator has no camera. Staff never uses after 9 p.m. Tatiana, Oct 3. They selected Friday, October 15th for the murder, a date chosen for specific advantages. Weather forecasts predicted heavy rain, reducing potential witnesses on surrounding balconies and terraces. The building's weekend security staff was less experienced than weekday personnel. Most importantly, Celeste had canceled her Saturday morning plans, meaning her body might remain undiscovered for nearly 36 hours. Prosecutors would later emphasize how this extended discovery window would have provided ample time for evidence removal and alibi establishment. The psychological transformation from theoretical discussion to concrete planning occurred gradually. Dr. Evelyn Chang, forensic psychologist, explained this progression during trial testimony. They created a shared alternate reality where this action became justifiable. Through repeated conversations, they normalized the unthinkable, reframing murder as a necessary solution rather than a moral transgression. This process of moral disengagement accelerated as their financial situations deteriorated. 2 weeks before the murder, Adrian received final eviction notices. 1 week before, Tatiana was notified her visa extension had been denied. 3 days before, Maya's credit card was declined while purchasing groceries. As their plan took final form, they established code words for various stages of the operation. Gallery opening meant the initial entry phase. Acquisition complete signified the murder itself. Exhibition closing indicated the cleanup and exit. The night before the murder, they met one final time at Temple Bar. Security footage showed them toasting with champagne at 11:42 p.m. The receipt, later found in Adrian's wallet, bore a handwritten note in the margin. To new beginnings. 24 hours later, Celeste Laurent would be dead. Rain lashed against the windows of 740 Park Avenue on October 15th as the murder plan activated at precisely 10:47 p.m. Building security footage captured Maya Serrano rushing through the front doors, mascara strategically smeared down her cheeks, clothes partially soaked. "Help, please," she cried to night doorman Ernesto Diaz. "My dog ran into your service alley. She's so small and in this rain." Diaz, a grandfather of 4 with a documented soft spot for animals, followed Maya outside. His absence created an 11-minute window during which the lobby security desk remained unattended. During this critical interval, Tatiana Volkov entered through the service entrance on 71st Street. Wearing maintenance staff clothing and carrying a toolbox, she moved with purpose toward the basement utility room. The building's camera system recorded her arrival but, crucially, did not capture her actions once inside. Forensic analysis later revealed she accessed the central security panel, applying a specialized gel compound to the circuit connections. This substance, commonly used in art restoration to create temporary adhesive surfaces, temporarily disrupted the penthouse alarm sensors without triggering system failure notifications. The method demonstrated remarkable technical knowledge. Security consultant William Hayes testified. The compound created microscopic breaks in the circuit that were sophisticated enough to bypass fail-safe protocols. At 10:53 p.m., as both Maya and Tatiana executed their assigned tasks, Adrian Laurent entered the building through the residence entrance, using his authorized key fob. Elevator logs show he ascended directly to the penthouse floor. Unlike normal visits, he did not announce himself to security, an omission that would later draw investigative scrutiny. Inside the penthouse, Dr. Celeste Laurent was working in her study, reviewing acquisition documents for a controversial Caravaggio attribution. The room, located in the northeast corner with views of Central Park, contained over $3 million in rare books and manuscripts. What happened next was reconstructed through forensic evidence and Adrian's subsequent confession. He entered the study without knocking, a boundary violation that immediately alerted his mother to the unusual nature of his visit. Their conversation began with financial demands. Adrian insisted the new will provisions were humiliating and restrictive. When Celeste remained firm, explaining the provisions were designed to help him develop responsibility, the exchange escalated. Phone records indicate Celeste attempted to call building security at 11:12 p.m. The call connected but immediately disconnected, likely due to Adrian's intervention. The medical examiner determined that the first blow struck Celeste on her right temple as she sat at her antique Chippendale desk. The weapon, a 14-inch bronze sculpture of Mercury in flight, a wedding gift from her late husband, weighed approximately 7 pounds. This initial impact caused severe trauma, but was not immediately fatal. Blood spatter analysis revealed Celeste attempted to stand, moving approximately 3 feet toward the door before a second, more powerful blow struck the back of her skull with enough force to cause instant death. Following the murder, the trio implemented their predetermined staging plan. They overturned selected drawers, broke a display case containing less valuable jewelry, and removed items valued at approximately $45,000, enough to suggest robbery without targeting the most distinctive pieces that might be easily traced. They deliberately bypassed the most valuable paintings and artifacts, taking only items that could be quickly converted to cash through non-specialized channels. Before departing, they broke a small window in the library, suggesting an entry point. This staging element would later prove crucial to undermining their cover story. The window was too small for an adult to fit through, and the broken glass fell outside rather than inside, indicating it was broken from within. By 11:42 p.m., all three had exited the building through various routes. The rain continued to fall, washing away potential evidence and providing cover for their movements through the darkened city streets. At 7:23 a.m. on Monday, October 18th, nearly 60 hours after the murder, Maria Gonzalez arrived for her regular housekeeping duties. Having served the Laurent household for 27 years, she used her personal key to enter when repeated doorbell attempts went unanswered. "I called out for Dr. Laurent," Gonzalez testified. "The apartment was cold, unusual because she preferred warmth. I noticed her bedroom bed was still made, untouched, since Friday morning, when I had last changed the linens." Moving toward the study where Celeste often worked late, Gonzalez discovered the body. Her 911 call, recorded at 7:26 a.m., captured her immediate recognition that this was no natural death. "Someone has killed her. There's blood everywhere. Please hurry." NYPD Detective Marcus O'Connell arrived at 7:52 a.m. With 15 years in homicide and a doctorate in criminology, O'Connell's methodical approach would prove crucial to cracking the case. "My first impression was skepticism," O'Connell later wrote in his case notes. The scene displayed textbook staging elements, too perfect in its apparent chaos. His immediate observations included: the broken window was too small for adult entry, glass fragments fell outward, not inward as would occur with external force. Desk drawers were selectively emptied. The most valuable items remained untouched. The security system showed no breach alerts despite the break-in. Blood spatter patterns indicated 2 distinct impact points with a pause between them. These inconsistencies prompted O'Connell to immediately widen the investigation beyond a random burglary. "When I see selective theft in a residence containing millions in art and antiquities, I look for someone who knows what's valuable, but doesn't want to take items that would be impossible to sell," he explained. The forensic team collected 147 distinct evidence samples, including partial fingerprints, footwear impressions, and fibers. Most telling was what they didn't find. The apartment showed no signs of searched drawers in the kitchen, bathroom, or guest rooms, areas typically ransacked during legitimate burglaries. While forensic analysis continued at the scene, O'Connell initiated standard protocol: notification of next of kin. Adrian Laurent was contacted at 8:45 a.m. According to responding officers, his reaction seemed rehearsed and lacking authentic emotional distress. He arrived at the penthouse by 9:30 a.m. in full view of gathering media, visibly distraught but dry-eyed. The technological component of the investigation provided the first substantial breakthrough. O'Connell obtained warrants for building security footage, revealing Maya's suspicious interaction with the doorman. Tatiana's maintenance worker disguised Adrian's unannounced arrival. The coordinated timing of all three individuals, their separate departures within 16 minutes of each other. Digital forensics yielded even more damaging evidence. Despite attempts at deletion, cloud backups preserved thousands of text messages between the conspirators. Location data from their phones placed all three within a 2-block radius of the building during the murder timeframe, contradicting their initial alibis. The most revealing digital discovery came from Adrian's laptop. His search history included: how long before a body is discovered if murdered on weekend? Do police check deleted text messages? Can hair samples prove presence at murder scene? Does inheritance pass immediately after death? Credit card records established the trio's presence at numerous bars where they had planned the murder. Security footage from these establishments showed intense discussions over diagrams that appeared to be floor plans. This wasn't a crime of passion, O'Connell stated during a preliminary hearing. It was executed with calculation and forethought by individuals who believed their personal connection to the victim would shield them from suspicion. As we examine this investigation, we want to hear from you. If you were Detective O'Connell, what other evidence would you look for to strengthen the case? What questions would you ask each suspect during initial interviews? Share your investigative instincts in the comments below. You might be surprised how many critical details viewers can spot that even experienced detectives sometimes overlook. The Laurent murder dominated New York media within hours of discovery. By noon, satellite trucks lined Park Avenue as helicopters circled overhead. The New York Times ran the headline, "Art World Matriarch Murdered in Park Avenue Penthouse," while tabloids opted for more sensational framing. Upper East Side bloodbath. Heiress killed in home invasion. Social media amplified every development. Lauren murder trended nationally for 19 consecutive days. TikTok users created elaborate theory videos, some accumulating millions of views. Podcasters released daily updates, often mixing factual reporting with speculative conjecture. The case hit a perfect media storm, explained communications professor Diane Wu. A wealthy victim, an exclusive address, a mysterious break-in, and a photogenic family created irresistible narrative tension. This intense spotlight placed enormous pressure on the investigation and on the three conspirators, who had not anticipated such thorough scrutiny. Their carefully constructed narrative began disintegrating when subjected to professional interrogation techniques. Adrian's initial police statement claimed he had spent the entire weekend at his Soho apartment, working on a business proposal. When detectives revealed they had cell tower data placing his phone near the penthouse, he amended his story, claiming he had briefly stopped by Friday afternoon, but found no one home. Maya told investigators she had been at a club in Brooklyn with friends on Friday night. However, security footage from her apartment building showed her returning home at 1:17 a.m., wearing different clothes than she had left in. When confronted with this discrepancy, she claimed to have spilled a drink and borrowed an outfit. Tatiana's story contained the first major contradiction. She initially stated she had attended an art exhibit opening in Chelsea, then returned directly to her apartment. When detectives asked why the security camera at her building showed no entry until 2:23 a.m., over 4 hours after the exhibition ended, she became visibly distressed and requested water. The alliance fractured completely on the investigation's 9th day, when ICE officials informed Tatiana that her expired student visa made her immediately deportable unless she cooperated with the murder investigation. Faced with forced return to Russia, she requested immunity consideration in exchange for her testimony. During a 7-hour interview at the 19th Precinct, Tatiana provided a comprehensive account of the conspiracy, including detailed timelines of planning meetings, Adrian's explicit statements about wanting his mother gone, the specific roles each person played, how they communicated using code words, their planned alibis and contingency strategies. She knew dates, times, locations, details that could be independently verified, Detective O'Connell noted. Her statement contained information only a participant could know. Armed with Tatiana's testimony, detectives confronted Maya during a follow-up interview. Shown transcripts of incriminating text messages recovered from cloud backups, Maya initially maintained her innocence. The breaking point came when investigators played surveillance footage of her distracting the doorman. Her composure collapsed entirely, recalled Detective Sarah Rodriguez. She transitioned from denial to bargaining in minutes, offering to implicate Adrian in exchange for reduced charges. Maya's confession corroborated Tatiana's account, while emphasizing Adrian as the plan's architect. She provided additional details about financial motives, describing how Adrian had promised both women portions of his inheritance, offering Maya a Miami condominium and Tatiana funding for her own restoration studio. Adrian, meanwhile, attempted to maintain his innocence despite mounting evidence. When detectives requested his DNA to compare with samples found at the crime scene, he abruptly terminated the interview and contacted attorney Spencer Williams, known for representing high-profile defendants. 24 hours after this interview, Port Authority police received an alert. Facial recognition cameras at JFK Airport identified Adrian attempting to board a flight to St. Barthélemy, a French territory with no extradition treaty with the United States. He carried $47,000 in cash, 3 prepaid debit cards, and a passport with a recently purchased visitor visa for Venezuela. Airport security detained him at gate B23. Dashcam footage from the police transport vehicle captured his repeated statement. "They're lying about me. I loved my mother." An emergency search warrant executed on Adrian's Soho apartment yielded the final piece of physical evidence: the missing bronze sculpture, wrapped in plastic and hidden inside a vintage steamer trunk. Forensic analysis confirmed it contained Celeste's blood and hair fragments, despite attempts to clean it with commercial bleach. With physical evidence securing the case, the district attorney's office formally charged all 3 conspirators with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The People v. Laurent trial began on a frigid January morning with media coverage rivaling a presidential election. Court officials established a lottery system for the 62 available public seats, with hopeful spectators lining up as early as 3 a.m. despite sub-freezing temperatures. Major networks broadcast daily summaries. Court TV provided gavel-to-gavel coverage. The New York Post printed special afternoon editions timed to coincide with daily adjournment. Online forums dissected every witness statement, evidentiary ruling, and facial expression of the accused. This wasn't merely a murder trial, but a morality plays about wealth, privilege, and entitlement, observed legal analyst Marcia Clark. It functioned as both judicial proceeding and cultural commentary. The prosecution, led by veteran homicide prosecutor Elena Rivera, methodically presented a case built on 3 pillars: physical evidence, digital communication, and the conspirators' own conflicting testimony. The bronze sculpture, still bearing microscopic traces of blood despite cleaning attempts, featured prominently as both murder weapon and symbol, a family heirloom transformed into an instrument of betrayal. Defense strategies diverged dramatically. Adrian's high-profile attorney pursued temporary insanity, claiming psychological manipulation by his co-conspirators combined with extreme emotional distress over his mother's financial restrictions. Maya's counsel portrayed her as an unwitting accomplice coerced through romantic manipulation. Tatiana's lawyer emphasized her cooperation with authorities and secondary role in the plot. The most consequential legal battle concerned New York's Slayer statute, Section 4 and 1.6 of the Estates, Powers and Trusts Law, which prevents killers from benefiting from their victims' deaths. Adrian's defense team argued the statute shouldn't apply since he never actually received the inheritance, characterizing his actions as theoretical crime with no practical benefit realized. Judge Eleanor Thompson rejected this argument in a scathing 43-page ruling. The defendant's action constitutes perhaps the most literal application of the Slayer statute possible. The court will not entertain semantic gymnastics to circumvent legislation specifically designed to prevent murderers from profiting from their crimes. After 27 days of testimony and 14 hours of deliberation, the jury returned unanimous guilty verdicts on all counts. Sentencing reflected the varying degrees of culpability. Adrian Laurent received life imprisonment without possibility of parole, with Judge Thompson noting his complete absence of remorse and extraordinary betrayal of the most fundamental human bond. Maya Serrano received 25 years with eligibility for parole after serving 20. Her sentence reduced in consideration of her eventual cooperation and psychological evaluation suggesting diminished judgment capacity due to narcissistic dependency patterns. Tatiana Volkov received 12 years with deportation upon release, her substantial sentence reduction reflecting her extensive cooperation with prosecutors from the investigation's early stages. Following the Slayer statute's provisions, the court upheld Celeste's revised will. The Laurent Foundation for Arts Education received the designated $48.7 million. The Metropolitan Museum established the Celeste Laurent Wing for Renaissance Studies. The penthouse sold for $32.4 million, funding workshops and living spaces for emerging artists across the 5 boroughs. 1 year after the conviction, Detective Marcus O'Connell published a case analysis in the Journal of Forensic Criminology, identifying the investigation's pivotal elements. This case demonstrated how wealth can create dangerous illusions of immunity, he wrote. The conspirators believed their privilege would shield them from consequences. Their fundamental mistake was assuming that money could purchase not just luxury, but exemption from moral responsibility. O'Connell concluded with an observation that resonated beyond law enforcement circles. The Laurent case reminds us that human connection, whether familial bonds or romantic attachment, becomes dangerous when transformed into transaction. When relationships are valued solely for their utility rather than their intrinsic worth, betrayal becomes not just possible, but inevitable. 5 years after Celeste Laurent's murder, the case continues to reverberate through New York society, legal circles, and art institutions. What began as a family tragedy evolved into a watershed moment that reshaped perspectives on wealth, inheritance, and accountability. The Laurent case prompted a measurable change in estate planning among New York's affluent families. Attorney Judith Cohen reports a 38% increase in clients implementing structured inheritance provisions with built-in safeguards. Wealthy parents now openly discuss the Laurent risk, the danger of raising children who view inheritance as entitlement rather than responsibility, Cohen explained. We've seen a fundamental shift from unconditional bequests to values-based estate planning. Manhattan's social circles underwent subtle but significant transformation. Hostesses who once showcased wealth through lavish displays now emphasize philanthropic commitments. Conversations at charity galas reference Laurent lessons when discussing family governance and next-generation preparation. The case created uncomfortable self-reflection, observed Dr. Evelyn Chang. Parents questioned whether they were raising grateful stewards or entitled consumers. The murder forced confrontation with consequences of privilege without purpose. Perhaps the most profound legacy remains the Laurent Foundation, which has awarded over 300 scholarships to economically disadvantaged students pursuing careers in art, history, conservation, and museum administration. These Laurent scholars receive not just financial support, but mentorship from leading professionals, creating pathways previously unavailable to those outside elite circles. The Penthouse, purchased by tech entrepreneur Miguel Santiago, now hosts twice-yearly residency programs where emerging artists from underrepresented communities create work addressing themes of wealth disparity, family dynamics, and ethical responsibility. Celeste's vision ultimately prevailed, noted Metropolitan Museum Director Catherine Williams. Her collection, displayed in our public galleries, reaches thousands daily rather than adorning private walls. Her fortune, directed toward education, creates opportunity rather than enabling dependency. The murder that shocked New York ultimately delivered Celeste's intended lesson, albeit through tragedy rather than tutelage. If you found value in this examination of how privilege without purpose can corrupt even the closest relationships, please support True Crime Dossier by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Each week, we explore cases that reveal crucial truths about human behavior and society's hidden dynamics. Share this video with someone who appreciates thoughtful analysis of how money, power, and ethics intersect in our complex world. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these important stories to light, stories that entertain while encouraging critical reflection on the choices that shape our lives and legacies.